There's probably no more valuable nor talked about tool in the workshop than the workbench. Welcome to the Renaissance Woodworker, episode number 29. Here's the first look of mini into my Roubo Workbench build. Bonjour! Welcome to the Renaissance Woodworker. Okay folks, it is December 26th, the day after Christmas 2008, and for the first time in I think about 5 months, I started pulling the 8/4 ash off the floor. I still have 4 pieces on the floor over here, but I started pulling the rest of this stuff down off the lumber rack because it's time to get this workbench started. So mark the day, December 26th, 2008. I have no idea when I'm going to start airing some of these videos, but it's about time I got started on this. So wanted to hit on a few things as I'm starting the project. First of all, you'll notice these gloves. All you got to do is buy rough lumber and start working with rough lumber once without gloves and realize that you need a good pair of work gloves or you'll end up with not just splinters but large chunks of wood skewering your hand. It's just a good idea to do that. In this workbench, of course, you gotta have the Bible. I, like many of us, have looked through a lot of different workbenches books, but none of them even come close to what this one teaches us and tells us about designing a workbench. So I'm going to keep this one close because I am building Monsieur Roubo's bench. So Monsieur Schwartz, or excuse me, Herr Schwartz, will be very, very close by throughout the entirety of this build. Now, I did buy this wood, as I said, about 6 months ago. I did buy it from a lumber yard. It is a 8/4 ash. It was kiln dried at the time as well. I got a really good deal on it. But you know, if you're following Chris's suggestions in his book, he says go and buy the dimensional construction lumber, in which case you should have a good moisture meter around. Now, I actually checked the moisture on these. I wrote it down. 8.7% moisture back in June is when I first bought these, and I checked it earlier today and it's still about the same, which is really where my shop sits most of the time. So just one of the little things to keep in mind as you're starting one of these projects, whether it's a workbench or not, one of these moisture meters is a great idea to go around. Now the other thing, as I was getting ready to start this, I do realize there's going to be a few other chores that I'll need to get to along the way. One being I really need to tune up my thickness planer, and I need to tune up my jointer. And tune up meaning mainly sharpen the blades, or in the case of the jointer and the planer, I probably won't even bother to sharpen them because the replacement blades are pretty cheap. So replace the blades, set the blades, wax the beds, all that stuff, because there will be a great deal of jointing and planing as I get ready to do the workbench top on this. The other thing, and Chris mentions this in his book, make sure you've got plenty of glue. Well, just coming out of the holiday woodworking season, this is all the glue I have left in the entire shop. So I think I'm going to go down and get myself a couple gallons of glue actually, and actually the Tight Bond, I think it's called Tight Bond Extends, it's the longer open time glue, is definitely, I'm going to get a gallon of that stuff because I'll want some extra time as I'm gluing all the pieces together on this workbench. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be building the Roubo style workbench. I put a lot of thought into what I'm going to be using it for, what types of work I'll be doing, and it plays really nicely into the theme of this podcast and blog, The Renaissance Woodworker. I do a lot of different things. So how do you design a workbench to meet all of those needs? To meet chair building, box making, wood turning, furniture making, you name it. I just got a book on marquetry and I've been fascinated by it. So what will my needs be if I start to do some marquetry in my work? You can imagine the types of work holding that you're going to need to do is almost infinite. And one of the things that I absolutely love about Chris's book is the chapters where he talks about what's the best way to dovetail a carcass, and he gives you 4 or 5 different options in clamps, different work holding capabilities of the workbench. And I actually took my my sketchbook. Well, I don't know where my sketchbook is. My sketchbook, and I actually made out a list of what are the possible things that I'll be doing, what are the things that I have done, what are the things that I want to do, and I made my own list of what would be the best way to hold this work, how would be the best way to execute it, and then I went back through and tallied each thing. Okay, I had 6 opportunities where I would want a tail vise. I had 12 opportunities where I wanted a leg vise, that type of thing. And I went through and I tallied up what was going to be the most important of the first options. And then when I realized, okay, it's not going to make sense to have a shoulder vise because I only needed one instance of having a shoulder vise, what was option number 2 for dovetailing? Well, you know, a leg vise would work really, really well. Well, I had leg vise somewhere else. So this is a pretty long, involved process. And I believe what I've decided to do, and actually even before Jamil over at Kalafood came out with his bench, I had thought about going with Roubo's original sketch and building the sliding leg vise instead of the sliding dead man. So I am going to do the leg vise and the sliding leg vise on the front of the bench. The other little quirk you're going to see about this bench is I am left-handed, so that leg vise is going to be over on the right-hand side of the bench. I was looking at an in vise and did I want to just do a quick release vise or a full-blown tail vise, and I weighed a lot of those different options. When you're looking at actual work holding capability, it seemed like a lot of the same things would work. Very recently, when the Benchcrafter tail vise came onto the scene, I was just really taken by how well it worked, the form and function, and I was also a little alarmed by just how difficult it might be to retrofit my bench with that tail vise. So basically I asked for it for Christmas. I didn't get it for Christmas, but I did get a lot of those little Amex gift cards, which I was able to put towards it as an early Christmas present to myself. I celebrated Christmas with a couple parts of the family a little before, ended up with some of this, and I put the order in. It's still on order, I haven't received it yet, but obviously that's going to be my vise of choice in the in vise position, is that bench-crafted tail vise. And I find that the one pro, I guess you could say, over the quick release vise is just its incredible work holding capability. And I have been finding myself doing a lot of leveling boards and planing across grain. And just reading Chris Schwartz's last blog post about his bench-crafted vise, how it holds it so steadily, I feel really, really good about that purchase, and I'm really excited when that vise gets in to really examine it. As far as the screws for the leg vises, hold on one second. This is a purchase that I put in quite some time ago. I knew that I wanted to go this route. I had come across bigwoodvice.com some time ago, actually before Chris Schwartz did a review on it, I promise. Of course, then he did a review on it, and then I decided, you know what, now I'm going to go buy them. The lead time on getting these screws was, I think, about 3 months. So I put the order in. Originally, I planned on getting started on this bench quite a long time ago. Obviously, it didn't happen, but I do have 2 of these wooden screws that we're going to use for the leg vise and the sliding leg vise. So fortunately, other than the tail vise hardware, I pretty much have all the hardware I need. I'll need to get a few things like holdfast and things, but I'm not even going to worry about that until at least the bench top is done. Like most people will tell you, once you get the top done, you can actually set it up on sawhorses and use the top in order to build the rest of your bench. So I think we've about beat the intro dead to death on this one. So I'm going to slowly but surely put updates out. I'm not going to try to release this all as one project later on down the road, because I have no idea how long this is going to take me to build, and I'm sure that other projects are going to intervene, and this is going to have to get set off to the side for a little while. Shortly before Christmas, I put out a Twitter saying who wants to place bets on how long this is going to take me to get it. So far, I've had Easter, I think, has been the common theme. You know, started at Christmas, get it done at Easter, birth and death. Maybe that's where they're going with that. Maybe I'm reading into that too much. Never mind. I would love to see some comments out there. Shoot me some emails at Shannon@rogersfinewoodworking.com. Drop me a comment on the blog. Let's see what you guys think and how long it's going to take me to build this bench. I will just stack the odds in your favor a little bit and tell you that I am notoriously slow on projects in the workshop. So let's just hope that I'm not that slow on this bench and I can get it done in time. So I'll do my best to keep you guys informed along the way as this bench goes. Everything from selecting which stock to use for the top to which stock to use for the legs. I hope to learn a lot along the way in building this, and hopefully in watching all the other videos of benches being made out there, I'll be able to learn from some of the things that you guys have taught me as well. So I hope you enjoy this next series of videos. I am really looking forward to getting this bench started. I can't wait to have a nice solid surface to work on. So thanks for watching, guys, and let's enjoy the ride together.
With all this rough cut stock, I need to rip it all to 4 to 5 inch wide boards, and because it is rough sawn, I don't feel comfortable doing it on the table saw. So figured I'd go back to basics and break in the new bow saw. And that took a really long time, and I got a lot of boards to cut, so I decided to switch over to my jigsaw here, a little tip I picked up from Mark Mazzo over on Craftsman's Path. And that was taking kind of a long time too, and I kept having to shift the boards around, and decided I would try one other approach and go to the good old-fashioned circular saw. This is always my last resort because just look at the amount of dust this thing is kicking up. Boy, would I love a nice Festool plunge saw right about now.
So I've taken quite a bit of these boards and cut them right down the middle to anywhere from 4.5 to 5 inches wide, and run into potentially my first problem. At the lumber yard, I had picked stock specifically for the top and some stock for the legs. The stock that I ran across that had knots and kind of some wavy grain in it I set aside to use for the legs. But for the top, I wanted to make sure that I had very straight grain wood, because obviously once I have the top assembled, I'll be planing it flat. And anytime I need to flatten the bench in the future, I don't want to be dealing with grain that switchbacks all over the surface, and I'm going to take a lot of extra care in order to plane it perfectly flat. So I've sawed all the boards I need for the top except this one about 10-foot long piece of ash. And unfortunately, without this piece, I don't have enough boards for the top, but I cannot see using this for the top. And here's a couple reasons why. First of all, this little section of swirly grain right here. What I would ultimately need to do to have all the boards I need for the top is slice this down the middle and use each one of these 4-inch wide pieces for the top. I may be able to use some of the straight grain I'm getting along the top to cut a 4-inch piece and just kind of save this as waste for another project. However, the top 4 inches needs to be 8 inches long, and if you look down here, there's a knot right in the middle, and this distance to the end of the board is not 8 inches long. So now I've got a little bit of straight grain on top of it, and again, I would be planing this surface to flatten it, but I'm just not real happy about having this knot right here in the middle. Same problem I'm running into on the bottom. If I were to take the bottom 4 inches and use that as a piece, I've got some pretty variegated grain along the bottom, and then again swing all the way down here to this end, and that's about 6 feet on the board, and I've got some really crazy wavy messed up grain down here on the bottom. So yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit picky, but at the same time, if you can imagine trying to plane a 24 by 8 foot long piece with a bunch of switchback and grain, it's going to be a real pain in the butt. So I think this this board has just been relegated to the leg. All right, now that I've gotten the top pieces cut to kind of a rough width, it's time to face joint and edge joint them. So like a lot of you guys, I just have a typical 6-inch joiner, which is not a big deal because all the pieces I've cut are anywhere from 4.5 to 4 3/4 inches wide. But they are still over 8 feet long. A lot of these boards are in excess of 10 feet. And I could go ahead and trim them, but I like having the extra length because there's some rounded off edges and just little imperfections in the board, and having the full length will give me a little bit more flexibility once I've planed them to final thickness to pick and choose where I want that 8-foot board to come from. So the key to jointing a really long board like this on a small joiner is the infeed tables. You can see way back there by the garage door I've got an infeed table set up, and then all the way down here I've got another infeed roller, or outfeed roller in this case, sitting here ready to receive it. And the big deal is to make several test runs with the machine off to make sure that the rollers are set at the right height and their position placed. You've got plenty of room for outfeed and infeed and all that. With a board this long in my shop, only being so long, I've actually had to angle my jointer. If I just go straight to front to back, I almost don't have enough room. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Let's see if I can get out of the corner without knocking over the camera. Okay. Oh, and for any of you wondering, no, this is not several months later when I'm filming this. We've got some weird weather going on here in Maryland, so I'm standing here in my shop in shorts and a t-shirt because it's like 60 degrees outside. So anyway, let's pull this back. Oops. Just ignore that. Okay. Now the way I've got it set now, the infeed roller back here is set in such a way that as I bring the piece up, I'm hitting that outfeed table. So I know that I'm getting good contact. I'm not, the end is not caused to lift up off the table because of the weight on the back side. So I actually, in order for me to push this across with a cutter off, I actually have to come in and kind of lift it up onto that outfeed table. So I know that as I push this across, feed it through like this, and I just hit that outfeed roller, and I've got full support all the way across that cutter head, to the point where when I've crossed the blade, here's the blade here, got some space there, the board is still perfectly supported, it's not lifting up off the bed or anything like that. Now, I may actually have to go back and make this adjustment for each individual board, but it's extremely key that this get done, or you're just not going to get an even flat jointed face. So let's run this back. Go ahead and joint it. To pay attention to there. Turn the air cleaner off. Obviously I didn't get an even cut all the way across, but the other thing to pay attention to is making sure that the concave side was down on that. So I took a little bit off the edge here. There's a couple of flat spots in the middle and some on the other end. Ready to make another pass. spending the last couple of days actually jointing the faces and one edge of the board stacked up against the wall behind me. These are the planks for the top. They'll be face glued to form a top. My top's going to be a little bit wider than the 24 inches that Chris Schwartz talked about. I've got the stock and I'm basically going to take it out to 26 inches. I didn't want to go too wide because it just gets too unwieldy and too difficult to reach across, but I have worked on a few projects that actually have been greater than 24 inches, just slightly greater. And I thought, what the heck, it'd be nice to have a couple extra inches on the top. So in one of the clips I showed you earlier, I illustrated one of the boards that I took out of the lineup for the top lamination because of the crazy wavy grain on it. So I went to lumber mill today and picked up a little bit more ash, and was really fortunate to get a piece of really thick ash, this laying on the bench top behind me. The other thing is this lumber mill that I came across, they actually dressed it, planed it for me for totally free. Now, I've been to a few lumber yards, but never one that does that totally for free. Maybe it was just because I only had a couple of boards, but this stock actually fully planed and flat on both sides, it's actually surfaced on 3 sides, is 2 3/4 inches thick. It's pretty sweet. There are a few imperfections. There's some sapwood and a little bit of bark inclusions on the end, and the board is about 98 inches long. I need it to be 96 inches long, so I am going to have to do a little bit more planing to get rid of some of those surface imperfections, like this sapwood that's really soft there. So I'm going to take it down about 1/4 inch to 2.5 inches thick. But when I rip it down the middle into 4-inch widths, I'm going to have enough planks with what's behind me here to form a 26-inch wide bench top. So all of my wood for the bench top is about ready to go. These still need to be planed down to 1 3/4 inches thick approximately. If I can get a little bit more thickness out of them, I will. But 1 3/4, if all of them are that thickness paired with this big fat board here, it will be exactly 26 inches across on the bench. Down there are some of the wood that I have left over, and I've begun marking it out, determining what do I still have to make and what kind of stock do I still have available. So I wanted to just kind of walk you through the shop a little bit and give you a tour of the stock I have available and how I go about laying it out and kind of taking inventory. On a project this big, requiring this much lumber, you don't want to waste anything. You want to try to maximize every board to its fullest capacity. So you don't want to necessarily quickly decide to rip a board in half when maybe you could have used it for a smaller part later on down the road. So I'm going to take the camera off the tripod and just kind of walk around and show you what's going on in my head right now with the boards I have left. Here's just a little bit of a closer look at all the boards I've got for my top. And this is that monster board, that almost 3-inch thick board here, and I'm just going to be ripping it right down the middle to form the last 2 pieces for the top. Now over here is a wild animal that I call Alex. No, seriously. These boards laying up against the cabinet here are going to be leg pieces. The legs are 5 inches square, and essentially they're laminated with 1 1/4 inch boards to form a 2.5 inch tenon on the top. So what I really needed to do was determine how high my bench wanted it to be and how long each board needed to be. And these boards are all around 36 inches long, obviously with the exception of this big one here, which sits at close to 50 inches. And the boards behind it, I originally was thinking I would cut them up and use them as legs, but upon a little closer examination and looking at my parts lists, I realized that with the width I would be able to rip them down the middle and form stretchers. So this piece right here actually has already been marked out. You might be able to make out some of those pencil lines. I can rip it down the middle into 3-inch wide widths, and then make cuts here and here to break those 2 up, and then down here, so I end up with 4 pieces, and those will form my short stretchers. The short stretchers are also 2.5 inches thick, but they're laminated up with 1 1/4 inch thick boards. Currently this wood is about 1.5 inches thick, so I do have a little bit of planing that needs to be done on it. The board underneath it, oops, loud noise. is set up to be turned into the long stretchers. And again, the long stretchers along the sides of the bench are the same, laminated with 2 boards to form a 2.5 inch thick piece. So, and Chris sets it up in his book where he doesn't actually cut tenons. In the laminations, he makes one board a little bit longer to form the tenons. So for the side stretchers, I need 2 pieces, one slightly longer than the other. And this board is going to be big enough that I can rip it down the middle and form 3 3/4 inch wide pieces and about 63 inches long to form my long stretchers. I don't have enough wood lying around right now to do the other half of the lamination for the long stretchers, but at least I know a pretty relatively short board will ought to be able to get me that length. I had some scraps kind of lying around and left over, and I stuck them up here on the wood rack. This is actually from cutting out the top parts, and it's actually going to work as the ledger boards for the shelf planks on the bottom. And by breaking it up, I'm able to get one of the long ledgers and the 2 shorter end ledgers. Up top here, I've got 2 9-inch wide 8/4 pieces that will be planed down to 1 3/4 inches thick, and as you can see labeled on the side, they will form the leg vise. This is the big long one here, and this will form the sliding leg vise chop. I still need a piece that's going to work for the actual sliding. In Chris's book, what's the dead man, but the back half of the sliding leg vise. Over here, right now laying across my jointer, just because I don't have any other place to put it right now, is another very wide, about 11-inch wide by almost 10-foot long board. And originally I got this board thinking I would use it to form the rest of the top. And I thought that I would chop up that big 3-inch thick one and form actual legs out of it. Instead of laminating 2 pieces in the center of the leg to make a 2.5 inch tenon, I would just use that board as the center piece. Well, upon closer examination, I realized that with just 2 boards, ripping that piece in half, with just 2 boards I could finish my top. And with this piece, I can actually get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 leg parts out of it. Because of the fact that it's over 10 inches wide, I can rip it down the middle and still get 2 5-inch pieces out of it. Plus, with some of the imperfections, the imperfection being this knot in the middle that goes all the way through the other side, I can actually chop this section out, cut it out, and still get leg pieces. I've also got some pretty gnarly grain down here in the end that's torn out a lot, which laminating the pieces together for legs is not going to be that big of a deal, but I can avoid the issue altogether and just cut that section out, thereby still leaving all of this wood that's going to work great to form the rest of the leg pieces. So originally I thought I just had enough wood to form the top and maybe a couple of legs, but through just careful planning, all I have left to do right now is get 1 board that's going to allow the second half of the lamination for the long stretchers, and I'll need a couple of smaller boards for miscellaneous things like the planing stop and the sliding dead man part of the leg vise. So that's where we stand so far. I'm going to get to planing this top stock, and I'll start doing glue ups from there.
Since my recently acquired monster thick board was actually surfaced and jointed, I can rip it down the middle just using my table saw. I've got my micro splitter set to 6/1000 of an inch pressure against the fence. You see I've got my mag featherboard over on the side there. And just slow and steady pressure. My table saw is definitely getting a workout on this massively thick slab. Notice the infeed and outfeed rollers just to make sure I've got really, really good support throughout. As I moved through this cut, I think I was starting to realize that I had my featherboard set just a little too tight, because if you'll see, I take both my hands off, really, really no-no, but you notice the board didn't go anywhere. Now, granted, it's a really heavy board, but I am really pushing at this point to move that through, which tells me I might want to lighten up on that featherboard a little bit. But once I grab the push stick and push it all the way through, I now have the last 2 pieces for my top. nice clean exit out the back of the board there, and I push it all the way through past the splitter, completely clear of the blade before stepping away. Now it's time to thickness the top boards. I jointed the face and the edge, and it's time to do the opposite face, and really from here it's just a whole bunch of planing of boards, one after another after another. Make sure you've got really good in-feed and out-feed roller support on this, because again, these boards are heavy. Now I'll just double check my thickness. I was able to get about 1 3/4 of an inch thickness out of all of this 8/4 stock. And back to jointing more boards. I ended up with a total of 15 boards for my top here. So now I want to go ahead and flip them up on edge and joint the opposite edge. I'm aiming for a total thickness of about 4.5 inches here. And again, good in-feed, out-feed roller support. I will guide it onto each roller to make sure that it's not pinching or anything. And this is going to give me nice 4 square boards. So again, just keep planing and planing and planing one board after another. I think this is shot over the course of almost an entire day of jointing and planing all of this wood. But definitely you want this to be as square and as straight and as flat as it can be, because if there's any deviations in this, as you glue up all these boards, you can end up with a lot more to plane out.